It's really been a big job for the cabinet and the exchequers here, the entire government. So a huge team altogether. Feel not only supported, but I think that we can really build something here. I had a conversation with President Trump yesterday. He said that he would call me, and he did at 8 this morning. And I had a conversation with him. We asked for one on Friday, and at 8 today, we had one. It was a long conversation, I would say, about a quarter of an hour, or three-quarters of an hour, rather. And we broached a number of mutual issues, and we agreed to work together on migration, for example, and protection and respect of human rights. And afterwards, we talked about us as well, the fentanyl traffic and other drugs as well, coming from Mexico to the States. And we put forward a number of proposals, and finally, we agreed that we should set up national guards on both sides of the frontier to protect the frontier and to avoid drug trafficking on both sides. And we agreed that there should be a pause to the tariffs. So in this case, we got disagreement, but I explained to him the seriousness of the whole question of arms entering Mexico from the US, and also, arms arming criminal groups. And we asked for help from the US to stop this traffic, gun traffic from the US. And I agreed. And finally, he insisted on the whole question of commercial deficit in line with his policy to Mexico. I reminded him that we had an agreement, commercial agreement, and I think that that would be the best way forward to discuss and address these issues. And I also told him that we should have an exercise which would look at this whole question of deficit. And finally, we talked about security and proposed that our teams should work together. And it's a question of coordination and collaboration, respecting our sovereignty and our territory. And he agreed that there should be this working group, particularly on sovereignty. And as for trade, I made the same kind of proposal, and that the Executive Secretariat of the Trade Council of Mexico should work with the US together. So we got to an agreement, and finally, I asked him how much time it would take, and he said forever. And he said, well, great. A month, he said. And it depends, of course, on his people and on Mexico. And so that was the agreement of the telephone call. It was a good conversation and full of mutual respect. And I spoke with the Secretary General to ask him to begin work immediately. And of course, he is helping us to strengthen our security on the frontier. So I think this was a good agreement, and we shall keep you updated on the uh, on the results. At the end, I talked to him about our campaign, and he asked me to send it to him. And I told him that it was very important that there should be well publicized, very important for our young people, after all, and we will be sending it to him. So that essentially is the information which I wanted to give you, and we will keep you updated on all these subjects. The most important thing is that we've got a break, a pause for the tariffs on Mexico, and also the decision that we should work together on drugs, fentanyl, and so on, and the arms traffic. Over there, please. There are two of you. I'd just like to ask you, President, what else can be done, particularly with regard to the migration problem? Because the migrants have been very active in the last days and have been subject constantly to aggravation. And they've been promoting a boycott campaign on video and so on. And obviously, they're very much against the criminalization of their stay in the States. And they are calling for demonstrations. Yesterday, there was a big one in California, in Los Angeles, for example, where they blocked the freeways. And there were similar kind of demonstrations in many cities, in New York, Chicago, and so on. They were very intense, and I think that well, we ought to certainly address this whole question of migration to the States. I wonder whether did you manage in your call to address these issues and, our brothers and sisters? We're going to have a working group, which will begin 2 months' time at 2 levels. A working group with the Secretary of State of the States and the Secretary of the Exchequer and Defense, working very closely with our brothers and sisters who are resident there. So new working groups are being set up, one on security and the other one on trade. This is very high-level work between the government of Mexico and the US, and obviously the migration working group will come after that. But we are supporting them all the way, Without doubt, it is the obligation of the presidency, after all, to defend Mexico in any part of the world, and that is what we will do with conviction. In this conversation, was there any possibility of your meeting the US president soon? We didn't actually talk about physical meeting, but certainly we talked about participation in the working groups on two subjects, including immigration. And what about the demonstrations in US firms which have investments in Mexico, in Arizona, and another state? I don't remember which one. A demonstration against the tariffs, which would really shoot them in the foot, have a big impact on the American economy. There are some states, for example, which are saying no to these tariffs, so we're not going to accept them. And there's an inquiry, a poll which has been published the last couple of days about the states, or rather the whole question of tariffs on exports from Mexico, and there was 100% refusal. What do you think of this non-conformity of opinion in the States? Well, I think that at the moment, or when it was announced, the tariffs, that is to say, on our exports to the US, there was a whole wave of media reports, and of course, it was amazing. I agree. The quantity of people, firms, chambers of trade, and so on, communities which came out to defend Mexico and to defend the president. And, you know, we had to talk to the leader of another state. 31 states of Mexico were totally in favor of the president. And on the US side, many people, many organizations voiced their opposition to these tariffs. Politicians, senators, congressmen, and so on, but also many firms in the states, saying that it didn't suit them at all. And that is the background to the conversation which we had today. So I'd like to thank them, really. It's very important for their support. You know, that nobody's going to rejoice at these tariffs on either side. But there's an article in the Reform which says that Mexico has to change its economic model. It has to change its relations with the United States. No, no. The fact is that the support that we got was absolutely overwhelming. And I think that, you know, this plan for developing our country is a very good one. And particularly with regard to the defense of Moscow, of Mexico and its sovereignty. Did you have any direct contact with Canada on this whole issue? How are they reacting? The Canadian provinces are talking about whether they should sell or not sell, or to increase tariffs on their part. We've seen that in Canada, they are even withdrawing a lot of states' alcohol, for example, from the shops, and boycotting American produce. So, the government has actually urged that, and people are following suit. And they're thinking about opening up their trade to other countries, to Latin America, to the EU, and so on. And wouldn't it be a good idea for us also to strengthen that kind of campaign? Wouldn't it be a good idea to promote this type of thing here too? Well, I'd just like to remind you that we have the Mexico Plan. The Mexico Plan. The Mexico Plan goes well beyond ourselves. It's in our interest to maintain our agreement, our trade agreement with the United States. That's, both in the interests of Mexico, United States, and Canada. We want to promote production in our country to boost growth and to protect the environment. The Mexico Plan also has the brand Made in Mexico, that whole idea of branding. And we're going to have a meeting on Tuesdays, tomorrow, I think, with the business community, which is going to talk about Plan B. So we are working on that project ourselves. And I think it's very important that we should avoid this whole question of tariffs and to look at working together and also strengthen the USMCA agreement. Thank you, President. I'd like to ask you about the financial markets. Do you know the instructions which have been given by the Exchequer to Rogelio Rodriguez, particularly with regard to support for investment? Well, in the last days, we've been working very closely with the Secretary of the Economy, the Ministry of the Economy, and obviously, at the moment, when they announced the tariffs, we had already been working before that. And so we have taken decisions already. We're working on Plan B, but it was very important to calm down the markets and to make sure that they were secure. But when we had the first meeting, we didn't even realize that there would be this conversation with President Trump. It's very, very important because there must be security on the financial markets. But, the Mexican economy is very strong. I think people are cool-headed about it and very strong. And it's like any other country in the world. We have to have safe markets. Do you think that this will lead to a recession, an economic recession? This actually, instills uncertainty in the markets. Um, Fortunately, we're in a good position because we've got a pause for the tariffs, and that gives us a certain amount of certainty. We have to make sure that we talk about security, migration, and trade, all very important issues together. I'd just like to remind you that the agreement lasts until 2026, the free trade agreement. So the Secretary Marcelo Ebrard is going to be talking to his opposite number about that. And we have a month to work on this within the framework of the agreement. Is there any plan in the Mexican government for reprisals, for example? Yeah, we're working on this whole issue, but the tariffs are paused. And you remember that the trade agreement always um, uh, emphasizes dialogue between the two countries. So this is a very good thing. So as to move forward. I have meetings with the Secretary of the Exchequer, of the Ministry of Finance, and so on in the coming week. And we'll be talking about expenditure, income, and strategy. We will be looking together at how the Mexico plan is progressing and the long-term plan that we have in mind.